Good evening. Can you hear me, guys?
Yes.
Yep.
Hi, everybody. My name is Kimmery. I'm staff at ACC, and we want to thank you for joining us tonight. Please know that all participant lines are automatically muted during the broadcast. For technical support, you can message Jacob in the bottom right-hand corner of your screen in the chat box. Just select host, and he can help you if you're having any technical issues. Today's webinar will last about 1 hour. We have 4 presentations. After our 4th speaker, we'll have a panel discussion, and you'll have the opportunity to ask questions. To submit a question or a comment, please type it in the chat box on the right lower side of your screen and send it to all panelists. From the drop-down menu, select all panelists. Please feel free to put your questions in the chat box at any time, and we will do our best to either work the answers into the presentations or to answer them at the end. Lastly, please know that we are recording this webinar. ACC will share the audio recording as well as the slides on acc.org. Everyone that registered for the webinar will get an email that lets you know when the video and the slides are up online. The American College of Cardiology's Early Career Professionals Leadership Council is pleased to present our webinar, Starting from the Grassroots, an early career guide to engagement with your local ACC chapter. It's my pleasure to introduce the first of our 2 moderators for tonight. He is an interventional cardiologist and an associate professor of medicine with Loma Linda University Healthcare. He's a member of our Early Career Leadership Council, and he is definitely the driving force behind the council's initiative to create this inclusive network and community of early career cardiologists. I welcome to our virtual stage, Dr. Aditya Bharadwaj. I hope I said that correctly.
You did. Thank you, Kimmery. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to our webinar. We're so glad that you can join us tonight. This project has been a long time in the making, so we're excited to share this information with you guys and really sort of begin to work together. We'll begin tonight by giving you a little background information about how this project has come about, and then you will hear from 3 very talented and highly engaged members of the ACC. While we learn about how they first became involved with the college and how their engagement has continued to grow, we hope to shed some light on that ever-present question of how can I be more involved? At this point in your life, when you've finally finished your training, you're settling into your career, and hopefully you've put down some roots and don't plan on moving anytime soon, this is the right time to start building those professional networks and start getting involved with the ACC. We're going to share with you tonight some of the endless opportunities that early career cardiologists can find through their involvement in this professional association. Now, ACC may seem like a massive member organization, and you've probably attempted to dig through the acc.org website wondering where to begin. But we're here to tell you how to start. The secret is to start small, start close to home, and get involved with your local chapter. Our goal tonight is to lay the foundation of an early career network that will close the gaps between our chapters. We want to put you in touch with your colleagues that are in the same point in their careers, wondering where to start and how to get involved. By bringing our early career members together, we know opportunities will naturally be created for you to network, to collaborate, share resources, learn from each other, and support each other. Engaging in these activities will bolster the trajectory of your professional and personal development. With that, let's move on to the objectives of today's webinar, which is to introduce the ACC Early Career Leadership Council's chapter initiative. We're going to discuss the benefits of the early career cardiologist engagement with their chapters, and we're going to explore ideas how to increase engagement of early career cardiologists within their chapters. Now, I would like to introduce to you all my co-moderator. He is also a member of the ACC Early Career Leadership Council. He's an advanced heart failure and transplant cardiologist at St. Vincent's, Indianapolis. It's my pleasure to introduce to you all Dr. Sunit Preet Chowdhury. Welcome, Sunit.
Thank you, Aditya. Also joining us tonight we have two panelists. Our first panelist is Dr. Poonam Velagapudi. In addition to being the chair of the ACC Early Career Section and Leadership Council, she's also a structural interventional cardiologist, as well as the Associate Program Director for the Cardiology Fellowship at the University of Nebraska. Our second panelist is Dr. Michael Cullen, who serves as a member of the ACC Early Career Section and Leadership Council, as well as the Associate Program Director of the Cardiovascular Disease Fellowship at the Mayo Clinic. On the agenda tonight, we have 4 presentations titled Introduction to the ACC State Chapter Initiative, given by Dr. Aditya Bharadwaj, Why and How I Should Get Involved in My Chapter by Dr. Srinath Adusumalli, Why Do Chapters Need Early Careers, given by Ms. Lianna Collinge, and lastly, How I Encouraged and Enabled Early Careers in My Chapter by Dr. Akshay Khandelwal. With no further delay, I'm pleased to have Dr. Aditya Bharadwaj get us started.
Thanks, Sunit. So it's my pleasure to introduce to you all for the very first time ACC Early Career Chapter Initiative. Next slide, please. So like you might know, the early career members actually constitute a significant subsection of the ACC. The transition from FIT to early career, however, marks an inflection point within the ACC in terms of both membership and engagement. A significant number of our graduating fellows do not renew their membership dues as early career cardiologists. While there are about 5,000 FIT members within the ACC, that number actually drops down to around 2,800 when it comes to early career members with active membership status. Early career members constitute a staggering 80% of members that actually drop off due to unpaid membership fees. And this is indeed ironic because the transition from a fellow to an attending is one of the most challenging and vulnerable times in our professional and personal lives. It is at this crucial time that the many benefits offered by the college, such as mentorship opportunities, networking with local cardiologists, sharing experience with peers from across the country, can come in most handy. Next slide, please. Some of the reasons for drop off for early career membership and engagement, according to us, is as follows. First of all, there's a lack of awareness about the benefits of being engaged with the college. Secondly, people don't know where to start. So we often get a lot of requests that people want to be involved with the ACC, but they don't know how and where to start. And thirdly, and most importantly, there's a lack of structured early career program at individual chapter levels, which we believe is the right place to start. Next slide, please. So as part of the ACC Early Career Leadership Council's initiative, we actually ran a survey. We sent out a survey to all the different state chapters, asking them how many of them actually had early career representatives. We gathered data regarding the contact information for these early career representatives. We also asked them what kind of programs they've been involved in, how many networking events they've had in the past 1 year. Next click, please. And guess what? We actually found that only 10 out of 50 chapters have a designated early career representatives. And we were actually shocked with these results. Next slide. So with that background, our goal was to create this chapter representative initiative. So the goal is to identify chapters that do not have a dedicated early career representative and to increase the number of chapters which are going to have a dedicated EC representative. We also want to establish best practices for early careers as state chapter and sort of give them a roadmap of how to plan things, how to execute things, and what kind of early career activities to plan. And then once we've done this, we're going to track the activities of each chapter and hopefully document progress. Next slide. So what we've accomplished so far is we already have a grant that's been approved, and we've identified 3 states, and we're really thankful to the state leadership of Louisiana, Iowa, and Virginia and their early career representatives. So we've identified these 3 states just as a pilot project. We're going to be working with the 3 states and doing exactly what I just outlined in my last slide. So we're going to be building an early career toolkit that we're going to be providing to these 3 states to begin with, but eventually all the different states that don't have early career representatives, And the toolkit essentially is going to be a guide as to how to engage. It's going to have everything from a welcome letter to an early career when they move into the state, all the way to planning networking events, how to manage your finances, and how to network with your peers, what kind of opportunities exist at the national level, etc. And we hope to have them check in with the Early Career Leadership Council periodically so that we can actually monitor progress. Next slide. So if you are interested in getting involved at your state chapter level, please reach out to either Sunit or I, and we will be happy to connect you to the right people and get you engaged. And if you have any questions, please feel free to ask us in the chat window. Thank you.
Thank you, Aditya. Next up tonight is a presentation titled Why and How I Should Get Involved with My Local Chapter, being given by Dr. Srinath Adusumalli. He is the incoming Eastern Governor-elect of the ACC Pennsylvania chapter, as well as the Assistant Chief Medical Information Officer, Clinical Innovation Manager, and the Assistant Director of the Cardiovascular Disease Fellowship at the University of Pennsylvania. Dr. Adusumalli, the stage is all yours.
Great. Thank you, Dr. Chaudhary. And thank you to the college as well as the Leadership Council for putting on this webinar and for asking me to present today. I think it's a really fantastic initiative to broaden early career professional involvement in local chapters, and happy to tell you a little bit today about my path through our local chapter here in Pennsylvania. Next slide, please. So a little bit of context about me. I am currently a third-year early career professional, so 3 years out of cardiovascular fellowship cardiovascular disease fellowship training, and I've been active in the college ever since I was a first-year fellow in training. And I actually started at our state chapter, being one of the fellow representatives for our state chapter Fit Jeopardy team. And since then, I felt that the college, and particularly my state chapter, has really helped to shape and mold my career. It's helped me develop my interests in clinical informatics, and it's really helped to develop other directions in which my career has gone, such as health policy as well as advocacy. And it's done that through many of the programs, many of the opportunities that I've had that started at the state chapter, but then have also linked to regional and national initiatives. One of those that I remember fondly, actually, that Dr. Collinge here has led is the Teaching Tomorrow's Teachers program, which I think some of you may have been involved in, but was another great state-sponsored launching point for my involvement with the college. Since then, I've served as our fellow in training representative for the chapter, as well as our current early career professional representative for the eastern side of our state and our advocacy rep. Those opportunities at the state level have turned into national opportunities as well, through programs such as the college's Leadership Academy, appointments on the informatics and health IT, as well as digital strategy committees, task force and committee, and most recently through co-chairing the Fellow in Training Jeopardy competition at the national level. So all of these have really come from initial involvement at our state chapter, both as a fellow in training and now as an early career professional. Next slide, please. So some of my thoughts as to why get involved, why has this been both a richly rewarding opportunity, I think, for my career at a busy time in a career, but also a way that I felt has been able to give back to the college and to colleagues and to our patients in many ways. And I think the first starts with connecting with our diverse community of college. I think especially during the COVID pandemic, connection to our colleagues, to our patients is something that many of us have really desired. And as an early career professional, I feel as though we serve as a bridge for connecting communities within the college. We've recently been integral parts of the fellow in training community, and now we're part of the early career professional community, and we understand what it's like to transition between the two and become a full-fledged attending cardiologist. And so with those experiences, I think we serve as a natural bridge between stakeholder groups within the college, both at the state and national level. And it really is all about the community. And next slide, please. And I felt that's manifested in many ways. Again, starting at the state chapter, because because the college as a larger organization is such a broad and expansive organization, I've really felt at home and developed my professional home at our state chapter through events, through participating with colleagues in events like Legislative Conference, through hosting our fellowship in training Jeopardy even locally, and through many other events. It's really felt like we've become a family, and that's across our diverse sort of stakeholder college communities and within our local chapter. So it really is a great opportunity to get to know the folks around you locally, build relationships, and then and build relationships again, not only locally but regionally and nationally. Next slide, please. And then if we can hit the next 2 points, please. So in building those relationships, you also can build your local, regional, and national presence, particularly in your areas of passion and skill set. So for me, in particular, I think that's manifested in areas such as clinical informatics, healthcare innovation, advocacy, and health policy. And really the opportunities that I've been given have helped to advance my career in those domains. And it's not just me. I wanted to share with you a couple of examples of folks within our chapter of other early career professionals who've been able to do the same in their areas of interest. So next slide, please. Dr. Aditya was a fellow and training representative and now an early career professional within our state who has a real passion and a continued passion for wellness. And really care team wellness, and launched an initiative within the Pennsylvania chapter known as Humans of Cardiology, which really is all about storytelling and telling the stories of our lived shared experiences in the field of practicing cardiovascular medicine and broader with other members in our state chapter. So how this manifests is a blog as well as an email that goes to members across the state, and it's really been quite well received, this storytelling initiative. And this was something that she has really championed, and the rest of us have supported to help tell stories of members of our chapter. So again, a way that she was able to manifest her passion in wellness and care team wellness in a particular initiative that then has received broad recognition across our state. Next slide, please. Dr. Marietta Ambrose is another one of my colleagues locally here at the University of Pennsylvania, and her passion is education. She's now chair of our education task force within the state chapter and has really led our fellow in training Jeopardy through the chapter over the course of the last several years. And through that, she's built relationships with other educators in the state, other early career professionals, and been able to advance her career in the education space while contributing to the activities of our state chapter. Another great example, I feel. Next slide, please. And finally, an example that I share with one of my colleagues, Dr. Joshua Levinson, who's across the state at the University of Pittsburgh, is a statewide fellows quality dashboard initiative, which leveraged both of our shared interests and passions in quality improvement, patient safety, and policy, and in informatics to build a tool that could be used, and that could be a concept really that could be used across the state in fellowships. And we also combined our interest in medical education here. So this was an initiative that we both were very interested in, that were again supported by our mentors within the state chapter, and was something novel that we were able to get off the ground that completely aligned with work that we were already doing and passionate about. Next slide, please. So, how should you think about getting involved? I'm featuring here Drs. Berlacher and Waxler, who are our current governors, who have really been incredible mentors to all of us, to all of the people I showed you, to myself, in getting involved. And I think any of your state chapter governors or local chapter leadership teams would be more than thrilled to talk to you about particular opportunities. But I think looking inside might be a good first place to start in terms of what is your passion? Is it clinical, research, education, system science, any of those and more? So I think for any of those areas, there's a home for you within the college, both at the state and national level. And alignment's important, of course. I think as a co-early career professional, time is really a valuable commodity, and understanding that knowing that makes any activities that are done outside of work very important to align with all of your other priorities. And I think that that can be done within your contributions to the state chapter while doing something that's novel, that contributes to your patients locally, and that contributes to colleagues locally as well. So definitely reach out to your chapter leadership team. And I think any member of that leadership team would be able to help you think about how you connect those passions with either ongoing or new initiatives of your local chapters. And with that, thank you all for your time, and look forward to the question and answer session.
Great. Thank you, Sri. That was a great talk. So I have a question for you. One question that often comes up is how to finance these early career events. For example, a networking event. Do you get funds from your state chapter? Do you get the support of industry? It would be great if you could elaborate on that as to how you've done that at your state chapter.
So we've been creative, I think. So many of these events are financed by our state chapter, by our local chapter, and they have been incredibly supportive and really for many, if not all of the ideas that we've had, to figure out some way to work them into the activities of the chapter, to promote them and to finance them. So for that, we're incredibly grateful. There are occasions where we've been able to enlist our local to enlist sponsors, particularly from industry, who we either interact with it through our institutions or through the chapter to sponsor particular pieces of events. So for example, our Fellow in Training Jeopardy was paired with an event where we talked about medical malpractice. And the medical malpractice piece of that event was funded through an industry sponsor. So it's a combination of the two, but the vast majority of it really has come through support of the state chapter. I think that's another really great advantage of working with your local chapter, is that it's an avenue for funding, support, publicity of activities that you're passionate about and that you want to advance, and that would benefit others.
Great. No, thank you. So I want to bring Michael in here. Mike, I mean, one of the big incentives for people to start off from the state chapter is obviously to build relationships with people at the national level. So it would be great if you could elaborate on what kind of opportunities exist for state chapter representatives to be involved with projects with National Early Career Leadership Council.
Right. So thank you, Aditya, and thank you to Shri for a great presentation. And you're absolutely right, Shri. The state you mentioned the key of you showed the Golden Gate Bridge, and you talked about the importance of using state chapter involvement to be a bridge to the national level. And, one of the things that I see a lot of, having sat on national committees where we'll get applications, is we get a ton of applications, more applications than we have positions, and one of the criteria that can really differentiate a candidate is what they've done at their state level, because that shows involvement at the state level, really shows that candidates through national committees are willing to contribute, are willing, can play nice in the sandbox, can get things done, can move initiatives forward, can help promote engagement amongst their colleagues, and that usually translates pretty well to engagement on a national level. So some examples of how that can manifest itself. We do have a number of some national conferences where sort of people participate on a state-by-state basis. So legislative conference comes to mind, where the state groups all sort of go out to Washington, D.C. Hopefully, fingers crossed, we'll be able to do it this fall, right? But that's one way to sort of take that state involvement and translate it to a national level. So for those interested in advocacy, connect with your state leaders, see if you're planning to send a group to Ledge Conference, if it, knock on wood, that it happens, and then if you can find the time and space, make a commitment to go, because you're going to get to know the people in your state that you're traveling with there to address advocacy issues on a national level really well. The other opportunity that I would, that Shri mentioned, is we've done some things with the fellows. The Teaching Tomorrow's Teachers program is one example, and Kim Eagle deserves and Pat O'Gara deserve a ton of credit for sort of helping us develop that model. But that's an example where we asked FITs who were involved with their state to go to their state and request sponsorship to a national meeting. And the state sponsorship was really that bridge to engagement on the national level. So those are two examples that come to mind of how state level involvement can really lead to national level involvement. And then once people are connected to the national level, it becomes a lot easier to make subsequent connections and take engagement even to the next level, really however far people want to take it within the college.
Absolutely. No, thank you for that. And a lot of people, including myself, can attest to that, starting off from the state chapter level, building those relationships really translates into, getting on to the national level. So thank you, Michael. So next up tonight, we're going to hear from an impressive professional who's had a great deal of knowledge and experience working within the ACC. She's the CEO and the Chief Executive for 4 ACC chapters, Arizona, California, Colorado, and Washington State. I'm pleased to introduce to you all Ms. Lianna Collinge, and she's going to be talking about how do state chapters work and why do local chapters need you.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Thanks for the invitation to be here and to share with you all how chapters work and represent my fellow chapter executives in liaison with you. Chapters do need you. They can help you. And unlike what a lot of people think, it doesn't have to be complicated and it doesn't have to be time consuming. So that I want you to have that as your biggest takeaway. Next slide, please. This is a little bit about me. I actually have 35 years experience in the nonprofit sector in association management. And I was lucky enough to come to the ACC about 18.5 years ago, and right away was very impressed with the ACC and the organization and the professionalism. And so much so that at the bottom you can see just a few of the roles that I've served in at the ACC in a volunteer capacity. And, full disclosure, I am not an ACC member, not eligible, but I am paid staff. And still, I feel very strongly, as do a lot of my peers, about giving back to the ACC and supporting all of you in various ways. Next slide, please. So a lot of people don't necessarily realize chapters are separate from the ACC. We work together, but we are separate, independent corporations with our own elected councils or board of directors and a lot of committees. I know in California we have 29 active committees, so lots of opportunities for involvement. We are the local, boots on the ground, the contacts, and of course we try to help accomplish all of the ACC goals and initiatives and focus around the strategic plan. But we also do a lot more in chapters that local leaders choose to do. And a lot of those initiatives are driven by local members. If you have an interest in doing something and you don't see that your chapter is doing it, it may be an opportunity to get involved with the chapter and bring something to the chapter to share. Chapters have numerous partnerships, some so difficult to mention, but American Heart Association, Mended Hearts, your local medical associations, other subspecialties. And so if you participate in any of those, acting as a collaborator with your local ACC chapter can be very helpful as well. Next slide, please. Thank you. All of the ACC is invested in your career development. Certainly the local chapter is your home court where you will learn about the ACC, you'll become recognized and involved, and ACC is your professional home. So we all like to act as one and help you remember that too. Next slide, please. I like all these pictures about legislative events. Here's a few examples of things that you can do that make a big impact and may have a very little time commitment on your behalf. Communications, following your state Twitter posts, Facebook pages, and reposting, commenting, sharing. serving on an educational committee or speaking at an event, volunteering to serve either on your board of directors, on a committee, or as an officer, and participating in advocacy. A lot of chapters do state lobby days in addition to the federal legislative conference that was mentioned earlier. Next slide, please. This is really important. Volunteerism in the USA, it's increased 28% between 2016 and 2019, and that's continued to grow. Why? It's fulfilling. It's a wonderful opportunity to meet people, to make a difference, to get involved, and actually be the voice of your industry within your local chapter. Chapters really need you. If you look at the third bullet point, here's just a few reasons, but we need you as the future of your industry to tell us, give us your opinions, your diverse opinions, your experiences, which are very different than our existing leadership and members that have been members for a long time. So we need to know what's happening and how things are changing that impact our members from your perspective. It's very valuable. Participation, as I mentioned, doesn't have to be time-consuming or a long-term commitment. Micro tasks are welcome. If you have an idea or if you have a certain amount of time that you would like to participate with your chapter and start meeting people, it's all welcome and valuable to your chapters. Next slide, please. Building consensus, is one of the biggest things that you as early career physicians can do within your chapter. And the ACC can help you in lots of ways, gaining leadership skills, networking, of course. What I really like is, although you may want to focus on the ACC in a certain clinical area, it also gives you an opportunity to do things you don't do and don't have the opportunity to do in your day-to-day work life. So getting involved in the chapter can help you be a little creative if you would like to do those sorts of things. Next slide, please. So how do you get started? I think it's really important to think about the ACC and your involvement as a long-term relationship, an investment in your career, and giving back to the ACC. So what does that look like 2 years, 10 years, 20 years from now? And people tend to really think, well, if I want to volunteer with my chapter or nationally, it's going to be a big commitment. And it doesn't have to be. And I really want you to think about that. All you need to think about is how much time do you actually have realistically to give? And when you contact your chapter, and I hope you'll reach out and communicate with your chapter executives, some of whom we have, several of them on this evening's call, be upfront and honest about how much time you have, and have a conversation about what does that look like? What is there that I can do? Is there a committee or a couple phone calls I can make just to start getting involved? So on the bottom, you'll see a link to all the chapters, and I am happy to act as a contact for you and happy to help connect you with any of your chapter executives and start a conversation. Chapters all, as I mentioned, operate separately from one another. And so I know that all of us are willing to help you and look forward to your involvement. Thank you.
Thank you for an excellent talk, Ms. Collinge. I wanted to loop in our other discussant, Poonam. You're very involved with the ACC, especially at a national level. And I was wondering kind of what your experience has been at a local level to kind of help you become more involved at the national level.
Yeah, those were two great talks. Thanks, Lianna and Shri. I think my thoughts align along what Shri and Mike have already said. I think being active at the state chapter level, so trying to take on things that probably nobody else has done before, may really help the state chapter engagement. So I personally took on the role of hosting Jeopardy for the state chapter. So I actually organized everything from questions to hosting it to, really actively participated in that. And so that was one thing that really was great fun for the chapter meeting. Second, I really took opportunities as they came. For example, there are state chapter awards for fellows to attend certain events, right? Like, for example, advocacy or teaching tomorrow's teachers, research related. So there's a bunch of opportunities which I think you may be able to avail. And those are the places where you actually get to network with the leaders of the college. And I stayed in touch with a lot of them. And, as opportunities arise, I would take them on if they were aligned with my goals. Another really good thing is to be active on a newsletter. So you could write articles for your state chapter, and that may go a long way, because then people do get to know who you are and you get to interact with a lot of folks as well. And then when there was an opening on the state chapter for council for a fellow in training member, I joined that, and I tried to be present at most meetings. From there, one of the faculty members is very active nationally, and that's how I joined the National Council. So I think there's three important things I really want to point out is, one, we have to do things that align with our goals. You don't have to go out of the way and do things that probably are not along the lines of what you want to do in your career or for the ACC. Always, say no when you can do something. Your state chapter executives are your really good friends. They can help you pick projects that, are good for you. And sometimes they even tell you what may not be a good thing for you. So really interact with your state chapter executives. They're great friends. And your chapter governors, reach out to them. You feel like, oh, it's the chapter governor, but, I was very scared to reach out initially. But then when I got to know Dr. Geeta Raghuveer in Missouri, it was wonderful. Like, she guided me throughout my fellowship, and I think I owe a lot of things to her. So reach out to your chapter governors and your peers and those who have gone, ahead of you. So I think taking on projects, finishing them to completion, doing things that align with what you want to do, and then networking with your state chapter colleagues will go a long way.
Thank you so much for your answering your experience. Our final speaker tonight is likely someone everyone knows. He happens to be the immediate past president of the Michigan chapter ACC, as well as the immediate past chair of the ACC Board of Governors and the associate division head of the cardiology division at Henry Ford Hospital. It's an honor to introduce Dr. Akshay Khandelwal.
Thanks. Thank you for the opportunity. I guess the immediate past chair is a title I hold for another couple of days. I'll be shortly relinquishing that, but I suppose that's what makes this a happy occasion for me. This is one of my last official duties in that regard. We can go to the next slide. So I think I'm going to just tell you how I contributed and got engaged to, or got to early careers engaged in the chapter, but a lot of that happens to do with how I came up in the chapter myself. So just like sort of Poonam narrated, I grew up in a chapter, in the Michigan chapter specifically. I did my fellowship at Henry Ford. Next. So way back in 2004, I was a second-year fellow, and they had invited fellows in training to submit cases. Next. And in addition to that, this was the time when Steve Nissen, I believe, was president or immediate past president, gave us the keynote on the application of IVUS to atherosclerosis regression and progression, which was then a novel concept. I'm probably dating myself at this point. But if you go to the next animation, there were several of us that submitted presentations, and I didn't get first place, but I got second. You can go to the next animation where it's highlighted right in the center. And to this day, I still have that on my CV because I'm pretty proud of that accomplishment, and my engagement in the chapters really started then. We can go to the next slide. So I kind of consider myself forever early career. I had to kind of look up what an early career meant, and I understand it's up to 7 years, and I'm 7 plus a couple of years, a little bit beyond that. But I completed my interventional cardiology fellowship in 2007. I engaged in various ACC and Michigan ACC work groups and some councils and section projects during my first few years. I was engaged at the local level and was asked by my governor, then Governor Herb Arenal, to serve as the Michigan chapter quality minister in 2014. was elected governor and president of the Michigan chapter in 2015 and served a 3-year term. And then I was fortunate enough to apply for and to be selected as chair for the Board of Governors for a 1-year term, which, as I said earlier, I'm pretty much completing my immediate passive year now. Next. So just an idea of what Michigan looks like. This is a slide kind of showing our demographic profile. We have about 1,800 members, of which about 800 are FACCs, 400 are CVT members, and we have about 200 fellow and training members, because we're a state with many training programs, both in cardiology and some of cardiovascular subspecialty. Well, we don't particularly identify early careers. If you go to the next animation, the career stage 1 to 7 years, which aligns with the early career definition, suggests that we have about 10% of our members, or nearly 200 members, who fit that category. So certainly, probably a lot of that is retention for fellows who have participated in their training here in the state, but also certainly people that have left other chapters and have come here to call us home. Next. So things that your governor can do, and I don't want it to just be about what I have done, because I'm really a team. I'm preceded by Claire Duvernois and Herb Aronow, and David Wones is the current governor of Michigan, and will be followed by Karthik Ananthasubramaniam. And so really it's a team, not just horizontally within the state, but vertically across multiple states through the Board of Governors. But these are some things that we've done in the state. You can go to the next slide. So first of all, I found it very important to engage with FITs in early careers via social media. I think I had either just started to put my thoughts together about becoming a governor, or maybe it was elected governor when I created my social media account. And I think that's really critical, because sort of old fogies like me and my generation primarily communicate through email, or maybe if we're really fancy, we get text messaging. But a lot of early careers and evolved digital personas elsewhere communicate via social media. And Twitter seems to be the one where most people have sort of settled. On Facebook is probably for my parents' generation, and Instagram is what my kids, I think, are working on right now. But if you go to the next slide, I think this was a way that we felt we could really engage our early careers in our chapters to kind of get them on social media posts, get them tagged, and make sure they were part and parcel of the chapter and chapter events and chapter history. Next. Another thing that we did is we encourage early career participation in chapter meetings, both on the planning side as well as faculty. So we made an intentional push to engage early careers, recognizing that we cater very well to fellows in training, and it's often that we have sort of the professors and associate professors, or that level of clinical practitioners engaged in as faculty in our chapter meetings. But what we were really missing are the early careers who are not only fresh with their knowledge, but are also in the process of building a burgeoning career and sort of perfecting their craft, perfecting their trade. And so that was an intentional move on our part to engage early careers through the chapter meetings. A great way, as has been said earlier, to network with others. You can go to the next slide. So the one thing that we focused on was the Fit to FACC campaign, the FIT to FACC campaign. So again, many fellows do stay in our state, but go elsewhere or leave from other states to come to our state. And if you'll go to the next slide, we made an intentional effort to target graduating fellows in training, asking them to apply for FACC. One of the ways that we made it easier is we just sent out an application, a sponsorship form, an application with a sponsorship form that was already digitally pre-signed by the governor, by me. And that made it at least one step easier for somebody to apply for an FACC status. And it's been a couple of years since we've had convocation, unfortunately, because of COVID-19, but the picture on the right is a picture from convocation, a very grand, egalitarian, engaging ceremony. I hope all of you have the chance, if not already, to partake and participate. Next. We were very intentional in recruiting early career members to our chapter work groups and to our boards and councils. Many chapters, call their leadership groups boards. Some call them councils. It may vary from chapter to chapter, but if you go to the next slide, you'll see a couple of examples where really within our board meeting, we're a very diverse group of practitioners, certainly physicians, CVT members, and non-physicians or non-medical individuals, but also a wide range of career stages. So again, intentional to engage early careers because we recognize that early careers are the future of our organization. Next. One thing that the governor has an opportunity to do is to nominate early careers to ACC developmental programs. And if you go to the next animation, there's a couple that I'm referring to, ACC Leadership Academy, early emerging faculty program that was run by Michael Wolk and Rick Nishimura and is now, I think, chaired by Katie Berlacher. But we've been very successful in getting several of our early career cardiologists into these programs, including many others that preceded me and that have followed since then. In addition, there are other emerging programs such as Emerging Advocate Program and so on that, believe it or not, COVID has not stopped. In fact, in some sense, may have augmented some of these leadership activities. So this is a great way to kind of get engaged in the college. In fact, I think a couple of our current panelists have participated, and I think I was lucky enough to be attached to Poonam's Leadership Academy project, which she obviously did all the work and I merely attached my name to. Next. So one important thing that was mentioned earlier is that governors can really help assist your application process on ACC committee. So not only is service to a chapter highly regarded and sort of allows you to state this is what I've done, it also helps to build your resume if you weren't accepted. We made an intention to reach out to early careers and ask them to apply to open ACC committee positions. And certainly, even if you're not able to get on an ACC committee, the nice thing is that if you put in service to your chapter, often your governor has other ways to get you sort of networked into the organization, into the board of governors or other parts of the organization, so that perhaps your subsequent applications might be successful. And so many stories like that where people perhaps have failed on the first or second attempt, and it does take a couple of attempts, so please be patient. But because of chapter-related projects or chapter-related engagements had a successful application, I know many in the state that I've supported myself. Next. Another thing is, and we kind of talked about this earlier, is grant travel scholarship to ACC programs that are designed for early careers. So if you run the pictures of the animation, whether it's Legislative Conference, CV Summit, or the 3T program, Teach Tomorrow's Teachers, that's run by Kim Eagle, these cater to and or have defined travel programs for early careers, and we were very intentional to ensure that we had early careers from the state, from the chapter, apply for, participate, and we of course supported their applications. You can go to the next one. And I think one of the most critical things is just really personal engagement. So I don't think there was ever an early career member, or any member for that matter, who approached me at some point in time and said, look, I'd like to get involved, and that I did not reach out to them. I always tried earnestly to fit them in some way, shape, or form, in some role in the chapter level. And I think that's where it sort of starts. Next. Just a couple of quick slides on what the Board of Governors can do for early careers. Next. Lianna kind of talked about what chapters are, but the Board of Governors are the governors of chapters from all 50 states. Some states have more than one governor, and some states have a governor but share a single chapter. The Board of Governors provides bidirectional communication between the grassroots members and the Board of Trustees. The current chair is Dan Philbin. Joseph Marine from Maryland will be taking his place in a few days, and the chair-elect will then be Melissa Wood from Massachusetts. Next. I think this is my final slide, or maybe penultimate slide, but just a couple of early career activities in the Board of Governors. There's a lot of focus on developing non-clinical competencies via boot camps arranged around finance, organizational leadership, advocacy, well-being. Several chapters, several states are currently or have undertaken these types of activities. Again, recognizing that this is a sweet spot, a very tenuous spot where you're fresh from training, you have all this knowledge, but now it's about applying it and then putting it into a clinical context, in an organizational context, in a practice context, so that's critical. Board preparation, obviously, early careers in the first couple of years are busy taking boards, and chapters, believe it or not, have actually held board activities and are willing to help. Certainly clinical and research mentorship, whether it's members of the chapter within your institution or even outside your institution. Many state chapters have been very successful in building those mentorship bridges and those matrix structures to ensure that their early careers are guided. There are career fairs, again, largely aimed at FITs, but certainly for early careers if they're looking to perhaps change their job or look around a little bit. And then finally, the Board of Governors is asking chapter early career members to liaise with the ACC's early career section and align activities. So earlier you saw a slide where only about 10 or so chapters have designated early career members. Certainly there's a move to try and improve upon this, but then also liaise back through the governor, but liaise back through to the early career section and align activities. And I think that's some exciting work that Joe Marine and Melissa Wood are embarking on. We're anxious to see the fruits of their endeavors. Next. And I think this is the final slide. I'll turn it back to you, Aditya and Srinath.
Great. Thank you, Dr. Khandelwal, for all that you've done at your state to enable and encourage early careers. And truly, what an incredible journey from, being a fellow in 2007 to the governor of your state. So I have a question for you. What, according to you, is the biggest hurdle for us to retain our fits once they become early careers? Is it just that they get too busy with their new jobs, moving to a new place? Or is it that they aren't fully aware of how they can actually benefit from the college?
I think some of that is definitely that career transition. It becomes a little bit difficult to connect back to the chapter, back to the college. I think and certainly when I was a fellow in training, I'm a little bit more focused on making sure I'm getting my feet wet as an interventionalist, as a proceduralist, right? Getting the requisite number of procedures, making sure that I'm on top of my game, again, building my craft. But a lot of it also, I think, has to do with fellows often pursue subspecialty training, and so that gets them a little bit away from the college. And then beyond that, I think there are other what we would call sister societies, right? So subspecialty societies that fellows feel a kinship for or feel attached to. I don't think there's anything wrong in engaging in multiple societies. I think it's where you find your value and for what. As an interventionalist, I'm certainly engaged in SCI, but I'm also engaged in ACC. I find that I get a lot of technical teachings and so on from SCI, but I get a lot of leadership development, general cardiology knowledge, non-clinical competency development, and a lot of engagement and service through ACC, through the college. So I don't know that that's an impediment, but it certainly does seem, it certainly wasn't an impediment for me, but certainly does seem to be an obstacle for some.
Great. No, absolutely agree with you. Thank you. We're going to start getting closing comments here. Poonam, so as the chair of the Early Career Leadership Council, what is it that you're most excited about our chapter initiative?
I think our collaboration with the state chapters, the award that we won, I think is really exciting. So we're going to start with Iowa, Louisiana, and Virginia chapters, and then early career members and chapter executives and board of governors. Everybody aligning with our activities seems to be very exciting, and I think the next 2 to 3 years, hopefully, we'll take that number from 10 to 50 or 51.
Absolutely, that is the goal. Thank you. Mike, can I get you to make some closing comments to all the early careers and fits on this call? What is your advice? I think the fellows on this call, some of them, in their final year of training, they're 3 months away from starting that first job. So what is your advice to them?
So what is my advice to the fellows? I think understand well, I could say a lot of things, but I think in terms of the college, understand that the ACC is a great professional resource for you, whether you are looking for clinical knowledge, whether you're looking for professional development, whether you're looking for mentorship locally, but maybe outside of your own institution. I think everyone with whom I've interacted with through the various channels of the college has been more than willing to help. And I think one of the speakers, I believe it was Lianna, made the point about understanding what you can give and what's on your plate. I think that really applies to a lot of different aspects of life. And so as these FITs enter their careers and their practice, having a clear account of what they have going on at each particular point in their life and what those time commitments look like is going to allow them to have a better sense of what they can give to other organizations. And when they make those commitments to organizations like the ACC, it allows them to follow through and really capitalize on them. So those are the two pieces of advice I'd have. Number one, understand that the ACC can be a professional home that people people are willing to help, and number two, have a clear account of what's on your plate, because that's going to help you contribute the most to the practice of the profession along.
I have one question for Dr. Khandelwal. It kind of piggybacks on Aditya's. It seems that the early careers within Michigan have been very successful at both the local and national level. And, this transition from early, fellow to early career and early career to mid-career is very difficult. And how are you giving, or what advice are you giving to these early career members to be able to make these difficult balances between both clinical and, non-clinical duties? And how are you allowing them and helping them get to these levels at national level positions?
Yeah, I think it's really important because I think a lot of training programs do a great job, again, on the clinical side. And when fellows, particularly those that graduate from more academic programs or academic-oriented programs, get into practice, it becomes a little bit of a different challenge. I think that our chapter, like other chapters across the United States, has been very successful because we've engaged FITs early and we've engaged them intentionally. So it does start at the FIT level. But I think what we've done is we've nurtured the early careers along by making sure that we've identified opportunities for them, perhaps that align with their skill sets and their areas of interest. And you can kind of get to know fellows, particularly that have grown up within your state, but as they get engaged in your practices and in the organization, and particularly at chapter meetings, I think that's when we start to identify those that are interested in seeking additional mentorship, whether it's, again, leadership, non-clinical competencies, finance, and certainly clinical. And so we've had a range of success in promoting different individuals up through different channels within the college.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Kimmery to make final closing comments. And before I do that, I want to thank Kimmery for all her help. This webinar would not have been possible without you. So thank you, Kimmery, for all that you do.
You are quite welcome. You guys did a great job. And with that, we're going to call it a night. Thank you to all my presenters and to our attendees. Today's webinar is copyrighted 2021 by the American College of Cardiology with all rights reserved. And that concludes our program. Have a great night.
Thank you, everyone.